everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the one-shot adventure Everyone's Been Naughty, designed by Christopher Waples for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. So Everyone's Been Naughty is a holiday-themed one-shot adventure for 5th level, which is nice to see. Usually one-shots tend to be solidly tier 1. And this one has Santa going rogue for some reason and murdering people and generally being a nuisance, and it's up to the players to save the day. It's pretty short, but it is a one-shot, and I want to stress the difference between a one-shot adventure and a mini-adventure, because a lot of adventures that I review are what I would count as mini-adventures. A mini-adventure is paced and designed like an adventure, just smaller scale and shorter. A one-shot, however, is paced much differently because you want to be able to tell a complete self-contained story within a single session of D&D, and I'm glad in this case the designer specifically spelled out that this is a 4 to 5 hour one-shot, because to me a one-shot is more like 3 hours, because that would be a long session for my group. So it's a little on the lengthy end, but basically it's a one-shot because you end up being extremely railroaded into all these. The entire adventure is basically a collection of scenes, and especially later on, you're literally just teleported from scene to scene. Now, for a regular adventure, that would be pretty egregious because you're not giving the players a whole lot of chance to do anything. You're just kind of ushering them along from, one set piece to the next. But in a one-shot, I think that tactic actually works very well because, you're on the clock. You need to keep that action going and generally keep them focused on what's happening. And in this case, there's an excellent chance your players have just played new 5th level characters and are just jumping into this adventure to just have fun with these one characters. They don't really care too much about, building up the character and all that. You're just kind of having fun goofing off, which, by the way, one of my favorite aspects of this adventure doesn't really have anything to do with the adventure itself. The fact that it includes new holiday-themed subclasses, which is really, really fun. I wish the designer had gone even a little bit further and included pre-generated characters. That's something I love to see that one-shots include, especially such a heavily themed one-shot where having some kind of holiday-themed character would be absolutely perfect. In this case, these are holiday-themed subclasses. We get the Toymaker Artificer, the College of Merrymaking Bard, and the Bond of the Reindeer Ranger. I would have loved to see some pre-generated characters of 5th level that actually used these subclasses and then threw in something else to round it out, some kind of holiday-themed cleric or something. Would be really, really fun. But as it is, it's amazing that we get these. And these are actually really fun subclasses. The Artificer especially, you essentially have a Santa-like toy sack with you at all times, and you can pull out different toys, but they all have different effects, and you don't get to choose. Every time you pull one out, you have to roll a d10 to determine what the effect is. Anywhere from a d1, you just pull out a nesting doll that's nothing, up to d10, where you get a little action figure of Elminster, and it fires off some kind of really powerful evocation magic. There's a little Xanathar squeaky toy that fires off a Beholder Ray, so you could roll, in theory, d10s upon d10s. If you're the kind of person that enjoys like the Wild Magic table or things where you're not quite sure what's going to happen when you do a thing, or the Alchemist Tinkerer Artificer, for example, I think this class would work very well, and it's really fun. I like the fact that at 15th level, you can actually build yourself like an Iron Golem style mech suit as like the ultimate toy. And it's interesting that instead of having a certain amount of toys you can pull out, you have a certain amount of scrap that you can put into your bag every time you rest and at the start of every day. So basically every short rest or long rest. And there's a formula, what is it, 10 plus 66, which I think averages out to about 30-some scrap. And then you can pull out a toy, which is 5 scrap each time. So I haven't done the math to determine what the balance level there is, but it's interesting that essentially every time that you, even when you short rest, which as far as I know, the Artificer necessarily isn't a class that operates on short rest versus long rest, but this way you get that benefit of actually being able to do something on a short rest and get some of your toys back, which is pretty neat. So I think that's a really, really fun class and neat idea. College of Merrymaking is similar, I think, to the Bard College of Creation. You can create a little moat, and it's a holiday moat, so it's a Christmas tree or a snowflake or something, whenever you use Bardic Inspiration, and that does a thing. The one disappointing thing about this one is that the holiday tree grants like an AC bonus in an AoE effect, and the snowflake can do damage on a failed charisma save. And the third one, the bell, is just the same as the snowflake, just a different kind of damage. So I was hoping we'd get 3 different kinds there, but it's still a really fun idea, and obviously can go with the theme of I just love the fact of summoning a little Christmas tree that it grants protection, and as you level up, you can summon multiples. And then the Bond of the Reindeer, you would think it's like, well, you've got like some kind of special reindeer companion. Well, you do get certain, like Fine Steed and Fine Familiar all as reindeers, but you also get the ability to summon reindeer spirits that then can all have different abilities, like they can deal extra damage, or they can help you with a skill check, or they can up your armor class. I love character classes that give you choices whenever you do a thing, and all 3 of these subclasses grant you a interesting new ability, and all of them involve letting you either choose or literally pull a random thing out of a bag. And that just creates that extra level of fun and interactivity with your own character class. So a really fun surprise addition that we get these new character classes in what is otherwise a pretty short one-shot. I mean, the whole thing is only about 15 pages, and half of that is pretty much these subclasses, which isn't to say I think that the actual adventure is light. As I mentioned, it just does a very careful job of pacing in that it goes from just scene to scene to scene to scene. Thankfully, it does provide a pretty solid balance of the main pillars of D&D. It's got socialization, a little bit, maybe not so much, but it is a one-shot, a good little bit of exploration, and of course we've got combat. So the adventure takes place in this city of Darkwell, where they have a midwinter festival. In this case, both Santa and Krampus exist as kind of 2 sides of the same coin. One of them comes bringing merriment, the other one comes punishing the wicked, basically, or the naughty. However, at the time that the players are here, the city center has recently been attacked by a red figure, and some elves have gone missing. There's even like some murdered elves in the street, and the players have to go kind of investigate that. So it starts off, you've got a nice little bit of exploration and socialization as you investigate things. There's a little combat scene between some, frost methods and smoke methods. And eventually you get pulled into the castle, where you're told kind of basically what's going down here. And you need to go hunt down Krampus, because we think Krampus is behind it. So to get there, you have to travel to this, which it just montages. There's no like random encounters or anything. Again, this is a one-shot. We don't have time for that. We montage over to this castle of the snowman. And this is a really funny sequence where you see just a bunch of frozen bodies. It's like a war zone, a battlefield. There's just a bunch of frozen bodies everywhere. And Frosty the snowman has been torn apart. And the players have a choice. They can either... There's actually 3 things they can do. They can either reassemble Frosty, you build the snowman back together, or they can put on his silk hat, which is magical and has some effects, or they can just search through Frosty's things and find the thing they need, which is the portal to go to the next area. Now, if they rebuild Frosty, they can have a social encounter, basically, and it's pretty... I mean, the whole thing is pretty dark twisted, like, the whole Santa's, or you think Krampus at first, spoiler alert, is, killing people and kidnapping elves and everything, and it's burned, their Christmas tree to the ground and all this, and you go and see this giant snow, and he talks about the snowman wars. Like, it's just, there's no explanation about any of this. Again, it's a one shot, we're keeping it very tight, but it's just, I really liked the theme of it just being really dark and twisted. And you can talk, and Frosty like promises to help the players out, but only if he kills them afterwards, or if he has a chance to kill himself. It's just so freaking dark, but I think it works out pretty well. It's not too like... It strides that good balance between not being like just edgy and dark and ridiculous to being like, it's pretty kind of a twisted darkness, and I kind of dig that. Or if a player puts on the silk hat, which can of course turn, puts Frosty back to life, then they become a giant terrifying snowman monster, and everybody has to fight them. So optional fights there, but it could just be a social encounter. The portal then leads to Krampus, where again the players could realize, if they're being more cautious, that Krampus is actually trying to cast the ritual to redo the Midwinter Festival, where apparently they swap places. Again, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, and it's Santa that's actually gone evil and rogue and not Krampus. So the players could fight Krampus if they want to, or they could just talk to him. Either way, he leads them to a portal to another area, which is Santa's workshop, and that is where the big showdown goes down. There's actually 2 different fights here, which I love the artwork. One of them involves a little toy owlbear and a toy beholder, which use the stat of a beholder zombie. And a bunch of like feral elves that attack, kind of soften the party up before the big fight with Santa Claus himself. So again, it keeps that pacing moving pretty well. Now there are maps included, which is a huge plus. So, the adventure, it's not it's not super all-encompassing, but I think it's decently memorable in of itself. But it's the extra stuff. It's the subclasses and it's the maps, which are not embedded in this adventure. I've got a picture I can pull up that shows one of them right here. This is the Santa's Workshop map. So we get full color grid battle maps for all of those major, not all of the major locations, but basically the ones that should involve a main fight, which is the city center where you're attacked by the Mephits and I think a snow monster. The Krampus area that he's in, which could involve a fight with Krampus or could not. I don't think we get to the one with the snowman. So if you end up fighting the snowman, I don't think you have a map there. And then, of course, you get Santa's Workshop, which involves 2 different fights in there. But that's a huge plus. So I do like that we get the maps, even though, again, this is it's not a long adventure. It's a very small little one-shot. And technically, there are different endings here, depending on if you killed Krampus, if you killed Santa. And it kind of works like a Santa Claus thing, where like somebody has to become Santa and somebody has to become Krampus. Since it's a one-shot, I think you can do that kind of extra little bit and kind of create that forced retirement for the players because, we're probably not going to continue these goofy characters anymore. This is the end of their story. So that's fine. It's not... The one thing that's really missing to me is there is a funny fourth wall breaking little dialogue that Santa has with the players. It's actually really funny. When you walk into the store, he looks up and you're supposed to say the players' names and not their character names and say, oh, you've been really naughty playing D&D instead of helping out, in holiday season or something to that effect, which is fun and goofy, but I didn't like the fact that there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no motivation, there's no reason for Santa to be doing all this. Like, they don't really explain in the context of the story, like, why has Santa gone rogue and gone evil. Like I don't understand the reason. There's no narrative reason. Not saying that this one needs, there's not a whole lot of big storytelling moment here, but you are investigating the whole thing. I like the twist that the Krampus isn't the evil one and that it's Santa. I like that twist, but I still need some kind of explanation, maybe a longer villainous monologue about how, I don't know, Santa is sick of this shit and is really tired of rewarding people who are only like mildly, good-natured or something to that effect. I feel like there was just a little bit missing there, maybe in that opening dialogue sequence that kind of explained why Santa actually turned evil and why we need to beat him up. We do get new stat blocks for Krampus, which again is an optional fight. Santa Claus himself, which is a pretty decent little fight. He's got some legendary actions. Unfortunately, I believe he is alone, and I'm tempted to put him as part of the same combat scene that's outside, even though you lose that. Well, you can still do dialogue sequence. I guess as the first fight is wrapping up, maybe have Santa appear in the factory rather than have him be like just a solo. Because I always feel bad about those solo boss fights. The action economy is going to kill you every time, even if you've got legendary actions. It can be pretty painful. And 5th level PCs, I mean, you're getting pretty strong at that point. You can, it's always surprising what they can take out. But I think it's a really solid product. I love the bonus subclasses. As far as an adventure goes, it's extremely railroady and linear. You're going from scene to scene, but because it's a one-shot specifically, then I think it works in the context of a one-shot where you need to drag those players and just pop them into each individual scene. And I like that it's not all just combat. There are some good moments where you can investigate and explore. You're investigating the crime scene and you're talking to Frosty the Snowman about the Snowman Wars and what's going down. You can even talk to Krampus. And then, of course, there's plenty of combat scenes throughout. So I think it actually paces everything very, very well, which leads into my pros and cons. It is a well-paced one-shot with a solid balance of combat, exploration, and socialization, which is pretty impressive. Pro, full color grid battle maps, which is very impressive for a product of this relatively small size that we actually get battle maps for it. And frankly, battle maps like multiples. And you even get there's a city region map, which we don't really need that. I mean, you can theater the mind, the city and the region. I don't need to, again, in the context of a one shot, I don't need like a big fantasy map showing everything. You just give me the little bits and pieces that we're using. Pros, I love the holiday-themed subclasses. I think they actually work very, very well. They all provide new fun things, and of course they tie into the holiday theme very well. And pro, something I kind of glossed over, which is that each potential combat encounter has options for rebalancing the combat encounter by either going weaker or stronger, depending on A, if your players are higher or lower, which as a one-shot they should just be whatever level you are, but B, if you just want to feel like challenging them during certain fights, or if you're maybe hot on time, you maybe back off a little bit on other fights. I do like whenever it has suggestions about like enemy numbers and what tactics they should use and extra things they should employ. The only con that I have, so I did mention that I would have loved to have pre-generated characters here, but I'm not going to include that as a con because even getting the subclasses is a huge bonus, and I think that's awesome. It would have been nice to get the pre-generated classes, especially using those new ones, but that's not something I'm going to count against the adventure for because, again, that's all just bonus stuff. But something to think about for really anybody designing a one-shot, especially a one-shot that is a very certain theme that should have certain kind of characters in it, providing just pre-generated character sheets. You don't have to even give me backstories or anything like that. Maybe just the basic, flaws and stuff. And you could have fun with it. Be like a holiday. Be like your flaws. I really like hot chocolate or something. I have a sweet tooth. You could be cute with it and have fun. But that would have been a fun thing to have. But that's not my con. My only con is the villain motivation. I don't see any reason for why Santa is doing what he's doing. I think we're missing a little bit at the end. Not that I think the adventure falls apart without a proper villainous motivation, but to me, just a little bit extra from Santa explaining why he went evil, and maybe having a little bit of a longer, monologue at the end would have been a little more narratively satisfying. Final verdict, Everyone's Been Naughty is a satisfyingly dark twist on a holiday-themed one-shot adventure. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.